On a stormy night in England, August 6, 1897, frightened villagers rushed to the local constable after discovering a badly damaged ship washed ashore near the coast. Cut to the violent waves crashing against the shore as the mysterious merchant vessel, the Demeter, slowly emerges through the thick fog. Villagers and police cautiously board the abandoned ship, uncovering bloodstains, destroyed cabins, and terrifying signs of chaos everywhere. There are no survivors, only silence. Fade over to the captain's quarters, where they recover the captain's logbook, the final record of the horror that unfolded aboard the doomed voyage. As the pages turn, the story flashes back 1 month earlier to the beginning of the nightmare. In the busy port city of Varna, the merchant ship Demeter prepares for a long voyage to London, carrying mysterious private cargo from Transylvania. The ship is commanded by Captain Elliot, an experienced sailor traveling alongside his young grandson Toby. Cut to a group of men gambling near the docks as news spreads that the Demeter is searching for 3 additional crewmen for the journey. The men quickly gather and line up while Wojciech carefully chooses who will board the ship. One man immediately catches his attention, a well-dressed stranger named Clemens, the only applicant who appears educated. Clemens explains that he graduated from University of Cambridge and once worked as a medical practitioner. Judging by his appearance and lack of sailing experience, Wojciech initially refuses him, but Clemens insists, adding that he can navigate using the stars when needed. Even so, Wojciech still turns him away, choosing instead a one-eyed sailor and 2 other unnamed men. Fade over to another part of the docks, where a crewman named Olgarin attempts to hire Romanian workers to help load the cargo. The workers nervously refuse, warning that they must leave before sunset. Terrified, they hurriedly abandon the docks. But before leaving, one of them quietly wishes the crew good luck and hopes they survive the journey, as if they know something the sailors do not. Moments later, while loading one of the heavy crates, the one-eyed sailor suddenly notices a dragon symbol marked on the cargo. Shocked, he loses control of the rope, causing the crate to swing directly toward Toby. Luckily, Clemens is still nearby and rushes forward, saving the boy's life just in time. Captain Elliot orders the sailor restrained, but the frightened man insists he recognizes the symbol and warns the crew that it is a terrible omen before abandoning the ship entirely. The incident earns Clemens the captain's respect. Grateful for saving Toby, Captain Elliot orders Wojciech to offer Clemens a place aboard the Demeter. Clemens immediately joins the crew, unaware that he has just stepped aboard a floating coffin. As the sun begins to set, the Demeter finally departs from the harbor, while the Romanian workers watch from a distance, staring at the ship with the fear of men who know a terrible fate awaits. Shortly after the voyage begins, Toby quickly befriends Clemens and excitedly gives him a tour of the ship. He introduces him to his dog, Huckleberry, and guides him through the narrow halls and cramped rooms of the vessel until they reach the kitchen, where Clemens meets the Demeter's cook, Joseph. Toby then leads him to his quarters. Later that night, Captain Elliot updates his journal, carefully recording the mysterious cargo and every soul aboard the ship. Including himself, the Demeter carries 11 people in total, 5 crewmen, 2 officers, a cook, a doctor, Toby, and the captain himself. He estimates they will reach London in less than a month. Fade into a quiet conversation between Captain Elliot and Wojciech, where the captain reveals his plan to retire after the voyage and purchase a cottage in Ireland. He tells Wojciech that once they arrive in London, he will officially become the Demeter's new captain. As the night deepens, the crew gathers together singing, drinking, and dancing beneath the lantern light, completely unaware of the unimaginable terror waiting to unleash itself upon them. The crew gathers as Captain Elliot discusses the bonus they will receive if the cargo reaches London on time, but the meeting is suddenly interrupted by strange noises below deck. Clemens and Toby rush to check the animals, only to find them panicking violently before a massive wave slams into the Demeter, sending one of the cargo crates crashing onto the deck. While Toby alerts the captain, Clemens investigates the broken crate and discovers a young woman buried beneath layers of dirt, barely alive. He quickly treats her and explains that she needs a blood transfusion to survive. Although Wojciech insists she is bad luck and should be thrown overboard, Captain Elliot refuses, and the crew silently watches as Clemens performs the transfusion and prepares a room for her recovery. Later that night, Clemens stands alone on the quarterdeck as Olgarin warns him that some of the crew are unhappy about saving the girl. The horror aboard the Demeter finally reveals itself when Joseph discovers Toby's dog, Huckleberry, dead and horribly mutilated below deck. He quickly realizes every animal aboard the ship has been brutally slaughtered. As panic spreads, suspicion falls on the mysterious woman rescued by Clemens, but Clemens fiercely defends her, insisting she is too weak to be responsible, and even Wojciech agrees. Clemens suggests the dog may have gone rabid, but Petrovsky accuses both Clemens and the woman instead, causing a heated confrontation before Abrams pulls them apart. As tension consumes the crew, Olgarin suddenly warns them that true evil is already aboard the ship. After 16 days at sea, the woman slowly begins recovering, and Clemens finally learns from Toby that her name is Anna. But as fear spreads among the sailors, crew members begin catching terrifying glimpses of a monstrous creature stalking them through the darkness of the ship. Joseph later confides in Olgarin, revealing that even the rats aboard the Demeter have mysteriously vanished. Later that night, Petrovsky stands alone at the ship's wheel when he suddenly hears scratching sounds echoing nearby. Believing Abrams is trying to scare him, he leaves his post and cautiously searches the darkened deck. As the lantern light sways with the waves, he notices strange damage carved into the ship before spotting a weak, crawling figure moving in the darkness. Without warning, the creature suddenly attacks, slashing open his neck. Petrovsky desperately crawls toward his knife, but the monster easily overpowers him before sinking its teeth into his throat, slowly drains the life from his body. Morning arrives aboard the Demeter as the crew investigates the disappearance of Petrovsky. Some believe he simply got drunk and fell overboard, but the blood scattered across the deck tells a far more disturbing story. While the crew gathers on deck, Clemens explains about his findings about the slaughtered animals. He reveals that every carcass carries the same wounds, deep bite marks and ripped open arteries, as if something feeds directly on blood. Before the crew can react, Anna suddenly appears and interrupts them. Terror fills her eyes as she desperately warns everyone that something evil is aboard the ship. She begs the crew to abandon the Demeter immediately before it is too late. Panic quickly spreads as Anna becomes hysterical, forcing Clemens to restrain her before she harms herself. Later that night, Anna finally confesses the truth to Clemens. She reveals that the cargo aboard the ship contains Dracula, an ancient vampire from Transylvania who feeds on human blood. She explains that for years, the people of her village sacrifice innocent lives to the creature in hopes of surviving, and she herself remains alive only to satisfy Dracula's hunger during the journey. Now the monster hides within the cargo of the Demeter, using the ship to travel to England. Then Anna reveals the countless bite marks covering her body, fresh wounds left by Dracula feeding on her night after night while trapped inside the crates. Clemens stares at the wounds in shock as the horrifying truth slowly begins to connect in his mind. Heavy rain and violent waves crash against the Demeter as Dracula silently hunts the crew from the shadows. Abrams and Olgarin investigate the strange knocking sounds echoing through the ship. The two split up, but Abrams is suddenly attacked by Dracula, who brutally smashes his head against the deck. Olgarin witnesses the attack and desperately climbs toward the sails, but Dracula quickly catches him. As the storm continues, the crew finds Olgarin hanging from the sails, barely alive. After noticing bite marks on his neck, they tie him up when he suddenly turns violent. The following morning, the surviving crew arms themselves with guns and begins searching the ship for Dracula. Toby is ordered to stay inside his cabin, but later that night he secretly wanders onto the deck and encounters Olgarin, who is already transformed. At first, Toby happily talks to him, but Olgarin suddenly grabs the boy and drags him away. Toby manages to escape and rushes back to his cabin, locking the door just as Olgarin begins smashing his head against it until the wood starts cracking apart. Toby desperately calls for help, until Clemens arrives just in time and attempt to calm Olgarin, only to realize the sailor has fully transformed into a monster. Olgarin immediately attacks him, but Wojciech quickly arrives and helps subdue the creature. Moments later, the rest of the crew rushes to the cabin and begs Toby to open the door, but there is only silence from inside. Before they can react, Dracula attacks again. The monster traps Toby inside the captain's cabin, and although the crew desperately breaks through the door, They arrive too late. Dracula bites the young boy before vanishing back into the darkness of the ship. The following morning, the crew chains Olgarin to the mast outside the ship. As sunlight slowly rises, his body violently burns alive while the horrified sailors watch helplessly. Panic completely consumes the remaining crew. Meanwhile, Captain Elliot refuses to give up on Toby as Clemens repeatedly performs blood transfusions in a desperate attempt to save the boy, but nothing works. Meanwhile, Joseph abandons the ship using a small rowboat, hoping to escape the nightmare. He manages to drift away from the Demeter, but Dracula spares no one. The creature suddenly lands on the boat and kills him in the darkness. Fade over to the empty rowboat slowly drifting back toward the ship, stained with blood while Joseph is nowhere to be seen. Wojciech reports Joseph's disappearance to Captain Elliot, only to realize that Toby has also vanished. The next morning, the remaining crew aboard the Demeter prepares Toby's body for burial at sea. Heartbroken, Captain Elliot struggles to stay strong as they begin lowering his grandson into the ocean. But suddenly, the captain claims he sees Toby move and desperately orders the crew to uncover the body. The moment the cloth is removed, Toby's eyes snap open. He is no longer human. The infected boy violently attacks Captain Elliot, but sunlight immediately burns his flesh the moment he is exposed. As Toby continues attacking his grandfather while burning alive, Clemens is forced to throw the vampiric child into the sea. Captain Elliot collapses with half of his body badly burned. In that horrifying moment, the crew finally realizes that Dracula is not just killing them, he is turning them into monsters. Clemens shares his plan with Wojciech, but the quartermaster refuses to believe it at first. Eventually, Clemens convinces him, and the two begin preparing together. Anna interrupted their discussion and warns them that they completely misunderstand Dracula. She explains that the monster is not hiding from them. He is simply rationing his victims, feeding on the crew one at a time to preserve enough blood until the Demeter reaches London. Anna insists that the only way to stop him is to destroy the Demeter before it arrives in England. Wojciech strongly opposes the idea at first, but eventually agrees, demanding that he be the one to burn the ship himself. The crew prepares their final plan. They barricade every exit aboard the ship except one, hoping to force Dracula into the open. Clemens informs Captain Elliot about the plan to destroy the ship. But broken by grief, the captain refuses. He draws his gun and insists that Dracula can still bring Toby back to life once they reach London. The captain nearly shoots Clemens before Anna suddenly arrives and manages to calm him down. Later that night, the shores of England finally appear in the distance as the remaining crew prepares to execute their desperate plan aboard the Demeter. But as the darkness deepens and thick fog swallows the deck, visibility becomes nearly impossible. Through the mist, Dracula finally reveals himself. The creature suddenly flies from the shadows, snatching one of the sailors into the air and killing him instantly. Wojciech is thrown violently from the mast and crashes onto the deck below. He desperately locks himself inside part of the ship and begins damaging the vessel to help sink it, but Dracula quickly reaches him. The monster drains his blood and leaves his lifeless body behind. As the storm grows stronger, massive waves slam against the Demeter, tossing the ship uncontrollably across the sea. Captain Elliot ties himself to the steering wheel, sacrificing himself to keep the ship on course. Moments later, Dracula arrives and brutally kills him. Now only Clemens and Anna remain alive as the once proud merchant ship becomes a floating graveyard. Clemens challenged Dracula to show himself. The monster emerges from the darkness, spreading his massive wings before flying directly toward him and sending him crashing across the deck. Dracula prepares to kill Clemens, but Anna suddenly shoots the creature, drawing its attention toward her instead. Dracula traps Anna beneath his wings, but Clemens slashes the monster across the back. The two survivors desperately run toward the lifeboat, but Dracula quickly catches up. He slices Clemens across the neck and prepares to feed on him until Anna suddenly discovers a way to injure the creature. She cuts one of the sails loose, causing the massive structure to collapse directly onto Dracula. Amid the chaos, Clemens and Anna manage to trap the monster beneath the collapsing mast long enough to escape the doomed ship. The Demeter crashes onto the shores of London, but Dracula manages to escape from beneath the mast that crushed him. Drifting across the ocean, Anna finally reveals the terrible truth. Dracula infected her long ago, and the blood transfusions only delayed her transformation. Refusing to become a monster, she shares one final emotional moment with Clemens before stepping into the sunlight and burning into ash. Helpless, Clemens watches the woman he fought so hard to save disappear before his eyes. After surviving the destruction of the Demeter, Clemens arrives in London alone, haunted by the horrors of the voyage. While sketching Anna's portrait inside a tavern, he hears a familiar knocking signal once used by the crew. Looking up, he sees Dracula sitting calmly nearby, now appearing as an elegant aristocrat blending perfectly into society. Dracula gives Clemens a chilling smile before disappearing into the crowded streets. Realizing the nightmare is far from over, Clemens follows him into the darkness, determined to avenge the doomed crew of the Demeter.